We bought a bus and we're turning it into a tiny home. Come and see what we're doing today. Yesterday we painted the floor of the bus and now we're coming to check it out.
Oh, light brown now.
Putting down a fresh coat of paint was seriously so exciting because it was the very first step of actually seeing our build start to come to life. So I know you might be thinking, well, that's a really strange color to pick, but it's not actually the color that we picked. It was just the color that came with the very specific type of paint that we were looking for. Whoops. What are we doing today, babe?
Subfloor.
What are we doing today, babe?
Subfloor. Lay down the subfloor. You put foam there and wood and glue.
Make it sound so easy.
It's super easy. You measure out the length of the bus or the width of the bus. You stagger your foam in boards so they're interlapping each other, and you just lay it down. We're going to be using the PL subfloor construction adhesive.
And we have to put what on top of the floor?
Sandbags.
Why do we have to do that?
Let's go to the fire station. We have to put sandbags on them because we've got to weigh it down to squish the glue and keep it in place. How many sandbags do you think we should get? I think we just need like 12.
Since this is a budget build, we got the fantastic idea to go to the fire station to get sandbags, since usually they hand those out when it comes time to flood, so we figured it would be much cheaper than going to the hardware store and actually purchasing sandbags. Plus, we didn't exactly have storage for these things and didn't want to lug them around in our bus, so it's really great that it worked out this way because we can just return them when we're done. We ended up getting about 11 sandbags. We initially wanted 10, but we thought it might be a good idea just to get an extra one, just in case. While you watch this montage, let me explain why we need these sandbags in the first place. Obviously, since majority of part 15 is about the floor, we need them for the floor. Now, we had two different options that we could have ran with when it comes to flooring, subfloor, and all that good stuff. We could have framed in a floor, or we could put in a floating floor. And we decided to put in a floating floor because the insulation for those type of floors is twice as much effective because the insulation actually insulates the vehicle because it's not touching any part of the frame, which basically means there's not going to be any cold spots on the floor.
Let me see your tongue.
Now it's time to pack up these sandbags and drive home and finally get started on that floor that we have been dreaming of working on for the past 2 weeks. And I'm gonna stop it there just for copyright reasons. And yes, we listen to Frank Sinatra all day, every day that we work on this bus. Because Frank Sinatra seriously just calms the brain and lets you get stuff done. Alright, enough about our weird music obsession. You're here for the bus. Yes, I'm frustrated. Why? Because the broom was pissing me off. That's it. And I was sweeping because, yes, it's finally time to start putting that floor down. So the first part of the floor is the underfloor, which is also called the subfloor. Now this is what is going to keep the floor warmer on cold days and cooler on hot days. In this next clip, we're actually trying to decide how we are going to stagger the foam because each foam board is about 4 by 8 feet and each one of the wooden boards is also 4 by 8 feet. So we have to figure out how we're going to stagger those so the seams don't land in the same exact spot for both the foam and the board. They have to be staggered to avoid warping and water damage and whatever else that you can think of that comes with floor problems. So we figured it out. We cut a third of this foam board off so that we could put a whole nother board behind it, and that way there would be at least a third more left of foam under the board so that we could properly stagger the edges. Next thing to do is start gluing down the floor with this subfloor construction adhesive. We had to place glue underneath every single one of these foam boards to secure it to the ground since this is once again a floating floor. This is like a second huge milestone because once this glue goes down and the foam goes on top of it, it is not coming back up, period. And we didn't necessarily do this 100% right. You're gonna find out a little bit more in the next few parts, but we did figure it out and we're learning from our mistakes, most importantly. So the rest of the floor did turn out pretty good except for that first initial board that we put down. The way that we glued it down was off or something, and we might have been a lot better off with some different construction glue. We felt like the subfloor construction glue was totally right for the job, but considering it's a foam to metal situation, maybe there's something that we missed. But once again, we've learned from that mistake. After we put down the foam board with the glue, we had to step all over it to make sure that the glue was separating throughout the entire underside of the board evenly. And when we finally had that first board in the bus about to put it down, it literally felt like we were breaking bread. Like, this is the first piece that we have added to the bus, whereas we've been taking stuff away from the bus for these entire last 2 weeks. Thanks for always being there, Frank. Now it's time to settle these boards down into the ground by using the sandbags that we got earlier. Unfortunately, I quickly realized that we did not grab enough once we placed all of these down.
Had to go to a hardware store and get some more of this stuff.
So even though the bus has no wheel wells, we still had to measure each one of these boards just to make sure that each one of the sides of the boards has enough space between the wall and the board for us to put an additional foam spray through. So he had to cut and measure out every single one of these before he could actually place them down into the ground. And once that third one goes down, we can finally start bringing in the wood because we have enough of a surface to put down 1 or 2 boards down. And of course, we have to cut these ones down as well. So he is taking measurements and he's going to be cutting them with a table saw to get those nice, fresh, and fine lines. And we actually did debate using a table saw versus a handsaw, and ultimately a handsaw won because it's so much more portable and it's smaller. And like I said earlier, we don't have a whole lot of space for a whole table saw, though we do have one in storage, but we don't have any room for one here. So the glue is placed like we did for the foam, and it's time for the second board to go down. Not really sure what happened there with my editing, but I'm sure you can see and understand the process that we are using to put this floor down. And once that second floorboard goes down, we start to realize that we don't actually have any more sandbags for the rest of the floor. And it was already like 6 p.m. and we really did not want to go back to the fire station and get 10 more bags. So we decided to put one more piece of foam down and hold it down with the pressure of the tools and stuff that we have, and hopefully that's as much pressure as the sandbags. So with the fan, we actually didn't do anything like this. We framed the floor, and each piece of the wooden beams that were on the floor actually created thermal spots. So in the wintertime, the floor of the van was extremely cold, and all of the insulation that was below the floor was almost for nothing. Like, it didn't help a single bit. And I'm sure it helped like maybe 5%, but the floor was so cold every winter, and we've learned from our mistakes. And okay, I'm not gonna lie, I completely jumped the gun because clearly we put in a third board. And thinking back on it, I really wish we hadn't, because a lot of these boards had a lot of problems, and you're going to see a lot of that in part 16. So we ended up borrowing sandbags from the first 2 boards, and I really regret doing that because those front 2 boards probably wouldn't have had as much problems if they had all of that weight still on it, but because we borrowed sandbags, it didn't really help.
That's not food.
It looks yummy.
And then it was on to the spray foam, and we know how satisfying this is because of what we did use it for in the van, but this was another mistake that we made. We should have waited until the glue under these boards dried, and in part 16, you're going to see why I'm saying that. But there's no going back, and so we finish off by stomping everywhere to make sure the glue is evenly spread out.
Marshmallow. And finished for today. We got almost all the floor down. We don't have a whole lot more things to weigh down the boards, so we paused right here. We're going to continue tomorrow when those boards are glued shut to the ground.
Show them the foam.
Show them the foam. And we also put our spray foam down in all of the crevices. Reason for this is to avoid the boards and the foam touching the walls, because that'll help keep our little home warm on cold days and cold on hot days.
What she said. See you guys tomorrow.
No.
See you guys tomorrow.
We were way too excited all night, and we really wanted to go check up on how the foam expanded. And we went in there and we started cutting it up because we thought it was ready. We found out pretty quickly that it's not. So we only did this section, and on part 16, you're going to see us do the rest.
You pulling it
it's
up?
still wet in there. It's still wet. this lesson learned. Obviously let it cure overnight.